Hello there, welcome. It is another Wednesday, the second today of November 2016. Wednesdays are normally the days that we link you up with your elected representatives in the Senate chambers of the National Assembly, live from the Nigerian Television Authority. On this special day, I call it special, especially for the working journalists, because it is an international day set aside to sort of commemorate impunity meted against working journalists. So for those journalists that had maybe were injured, the unsung ones, and even to those who paid the ultimate price, I salute you specifically today. On the other paper today, there are for consideration only one report, and that is the report on the committee of INEC. It is the INEC Act number 6 of 2010, Amendment Bill 2016, SB 231 and SB 234. But as we speak now, the Senate is actually meeting behind closed doors in executive session. How long that is going to take, honestly, we do not know. But what we're going to do is possibly look at some of the bills that will hopefully be deliberated upon today. The first one is a bill for an act to provide for the governance and institutional framework for the petroleum industry and for other related matters. There is also a bill for an act to repeal the Nigerian Customs Service Management Act. There is also another bill, a bill for an act to repeal the Nigerian Customs Services Management Bill again, and a bill for an act to provide for legal framework for credit bureau services and for other matters connected therewith. Try as we may to bring out at least one of the principal officers to talk to us. Of course, as you can imagine, could not produce the desired result. So we have to discuss the Senate anyway. I am privileged to have a colleague here. He is with the Guardian. He's Mr. Azimazi Momo Jimo. You're welcome.
Good morning.
Yes. Yeah, you've been covering the Senate for some time now. Let's go back in time a little bit, say 24 hours. You were there at the Senate yesterday. Describe to us what really happened yesterday.
I think essentially what happened yesterday when the Senate President put the question on whether the Senate will want to consider the request of Mr. President to borrow some $29.96 billion. I think there is an issue of mutual suspicion. In the parliamentary democracy, the essence of the relationship is to carry each other along. And I think why senators rejected that, officially according to the reason given by the Senate leader, is that the breakdown of that borrowing plan was not submitted to the Senate, and it ought to have been so. And in a normal situation where there's no suspicion, that could have been buried. We wouldn't know. They could just continue to consider it. And after some time, the appropriate committee will demand for this breakdown. But I think what has happened so far is that there is suspicion among the two arms of government. And as such, senators were not just comfortable with going ahead because they suspected that what is in that plan might be different. And this is not it's not good for democracy, and it's not good for the people, because if what the president meant is to borrow that money to work for Nigerians, obviously Nigerians will have been shortchanged by the fact that it has been rejected. But then, in ensuring that you do what is good for the people, you carry the people along. And the National Assembly is where the representatives of the people are. I think like what the senior special assistant to the president on National Assembly matters said yesterday, Mr. Itainan, Senator Itainan, that they have recognized the lapses and they are going to meet the appropriate agencies and ministries to put these things together and bring back. I think this ought to have been recognized so as not to fuel any kind of crisis. When any little crisis starts, it begins to build. And once it builds, the suspicion multiplies.
Was that what nearly affected also the designate, the list of the ambassadorial nominees?
Yes, like what I told you, the suspicion is growing. Even now, they are in executive session. I'm sure some of these things will come up there. Once a development occurs in such a manner as to affect the trust that is there between the parliament and the executive, it will continue to affect every other thing. And this is what is happening. So by the time, if you allow this thing to grow, any little thing that ordinarily senators should not even pay attention to. I'm sure last year when the administration took up, there are so many things, so many mistakes that will come up. Of course, it will be ignored. Senators will just. But once the suspicion begin to build, any little mistake will be watched by either side. The executive will watch the mistakes of the parliament will watch the mistakes of the executive, and this is not good for the country because it slows down development. But because of the principle of checks and balances, you ought to be transparently seen to be doing what you want to do. If any iota of suspicion occurs or about your footsteps, then the parliament will begin to ask, what is this, what is this? So you are aware that in this parliament, so many principal officers have been accused in the past of doing certain things with the executive that they are not as sure of. So this particular leadership, I'm sure they don't want to be caught in that type of web, so that a situation will not arise where they will be suspected to have gone to place. So even the leader said he was shocked. He said he was shocked that this happened, but he now realized that yes, there are certain loopholes that were not blocked. There's a certain act of lobbying that did not take place. So they are going to do that, and I'm sure by the time they do that effectively, certain things that are good will happen with respect to this.
Okay. Yes. But thank you very much for joining us. We are giving a short notice. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, as I speak, the Senate is still in executive session, and as we said, we don't know how long that is going to take. So we'll take you to the station, and then there are an old program that we're going to repeat. It will take as long as they take in the executive session. The moment the doors are open, we're coming back to you, and then we'll come back to you live, and then we'll continue the transmission. Happy viewing.
You know, the way in which we move and the way in which we transact businesses across the world, and the way in which our future is going to be harnessed. So, Mr. President, I think this bill is long overdue. The only thing that I would say is that, given the importance of this bill, it is important that senators see the content of this bill so that we can make informed decisions and contributions, you know, when they think that, because it's a leap into the future for which we cannot wait. Therefore, I beg the mover of the bill to please make available its contents to all of us so that we can be able to study it and make informed contribution to the committee that is bound to look at the bill again. I so present my own opinion, sir.
Is there any person against this bill? Is there any person against this bill? Okay. So, no, are you against the bill? Okay. Those who support that this bill be read the second time, say aye. Those against, say nay. The ayes have it. Clerk of Senate.
Mr. President, distinguished senators, a bill for an act to provide for effective and transparent administration, management, and control of payment, clearing, and settlement process in Nigeria and for related matters 2016, second reading.
Dear colleagues, a bill for an act to provide for effective and transparent administration, management and control of payment, clearing and settlement processes in Nigeria, and for related matters, 2016 second reading taken. Is referred to the Committee on Finance to report back in 4 weeks. Senate Leader.
Thank you very much, Mr. President and distinguished colleagues. The third order of the day is the second reading of the Federal Competition Bill 2016. Distinguished colleagues, you will recall that the bill was read the first time in this chamber on Thursday, 21st April 2016. Mr. President, you may wish to invite distinguished Senator Andy Uba to move the motion for the bill to be read a second time.
Senator Uba.
Mr. President, most distinguished colleagues, my name is Senator Andy Uba, representing Anambra South Senatorial Zone. Mr. President, my distinguished colleagues, permit me to lead the debate on this bill which seeks to repeal the Consumer Protection Council and establish the Federal Competition and Consumer Protection Commission. This bill was read for the first time in this chamber on the 21st April 2016. The bill seeks, among other things, to provide for the establishment of the Federal Competition and Consumer Protection Commission, promote competition in trade and commerce among the several states of the Federal Republic of Nigeria and foreign nations by controlling existing monopolies, discouraging the abuse of dominant market positions and other restrictive trade and business practices. Mr. President, you will recall that this bill forms a part of bills which were highlighted at the inaugural National Assembly Business Environment Roundtable held on the 21st March 2016 as capable of improving the ease of doing business in Nigeria and as a result help to rejig the Nigerian economy. The essence of this bill, of this important bill, which extends the present reform culture of the government into areas of business and commercial practices, is to promote a balanced development of the Nigerian economy, the welfare and interests of consumers, and provide them with competitive price and product choice, competition and enhanced economic efficiency in production, trade, and commerce, the expansion of opportunities for domestic enterprises to participate in world markets, the ability of small and medium enterprises to compete effectively, and the restriction of business practices which prevents or distorts competition or constitutes the abuse of a dominant position of market power in Nigeria. Mr. President, distinguished senators, I am delighted that this bill is coming at this time because it is necessary to ensure through legislation that monopolistic enterprises in our country do not take undue advantage and hurt consumers at will. The issue of resale price maintenance is critical in every market, and because it is well known that Nigeria is the largest market in Africa, it is crucial to ensure that we do not allow our country to be a dumping ground for inferior quality products or to be seen as promoting unfair trade practices. The bill provides that it is unlawful for any two or more enterprises that are suppliers of products to enter into or carry out any agreement where they undertake to withhold supplies of products from dealers, whether parties to the agreement or not, who resell or have resold products in breach of any condition as to the price at which those goods may be resold. Refuse to supply products to such dealers except on terms and conditions which are less favorable than those applications to other dealers carrying on business in similar circumstances. Just as collective agreement by suppliers is unlawful, so too is collective agreement by dealers illegal under this proposed bill. Dealers who withhold orders for supplies, whether parties to the agreement or not, discriminate in their handling of product supplies, and so commit an offense punishable under this bill when passed into law. The Federal Competition Commission shall have powers to give clearance for mergers, takeovers, and acquisitions, and give authorizations for them. Part 10 deals with monopolies. For instance, any person or body, corporate, who monopolizes or attempts to monopolize or combine or conspire with any other person or persons to monopolize any part of trade or commerce commits an offense under this proposed act. A monopoly situation shall be taken to exist in relation to the supply of goods of any description, the supply of services of any description, or the exports of goods of any description from Nigeria to the extent it has an effect on competition in the market in Nigeria, as may be prescribed in the regulation made from time to time by the Commission. Mr. President, the situation will apply in the supply of services as in goods, just as in the case of exports, where at least 1/4 of all the goods of that description which are produced in Nigeria are produced by one and the same person, or by members of one and the same group of interconnected bodies corporate. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, the importance of this bill cannot be overemphasized. It is at the root of the success of our economic policy as a nation and deserves the full support of all senators. The various offenses punishable by a wide range of fines as provided in this bill includes price fixing, conspiracy, bid rigging, and misleading advertising, and to ensure full compliance to the provision of bill in Section 39 provides for the establishment of the Competition and Consumer Protection Tribunal to adjudicate over conducts prohibited under this bill. I am satisfied that all the key elements necessary for a good bill are all in this Federal Competition Bill. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, the only financial implication this bill has is the establishment of the tribunal as the Federal Competition and Consumer Commission is taking over the structures of the Consumer Protection Council. Therefore, in line with Order 77.3 of the Senate Standing Rule 2015 as amended, a financial compendium on the establishment of the tribunal is attached. In the light of the foregoing reasons, I crave the support of all my distinguished colleagues to ensure that the speedy passage of this bill as an act of the National Assembly in order to further strengthen the economic reform package of the government and to also render our business environment more attractive to investors. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Dada. Dada Boland.
Thank you, Mr. President, my fellow colleagues. This is a very important bill, but the bill must also go further, because what we are witnessing in the technology aspect of this country is that we find one company providing the front solutions, the same company providing the backup solution, back-end solutions. Similar example in NIPS, Nigerian Settlement System, where the same company that do the processing for settlements, the same that provide the backup system. That is unfair competition. Competition must give opportunities for us to do better product service delivery, also competition and pricing in differentials. But when monopolistic system comes in, we lock up the best potentials in other side provider, and that is what this bill should be attacking, whereby one company is the one that provides the front end, the same company provides the back end. So,
are you done?
Based on this fact, I feel consumer products is not only a product that we use on a daily basis. Technology aspect in this country, if you see what is happening in respect to DSTV, DSTV is almost monopolistic in their approach. The same DSTV, they also own GoTV. These are also a part that addressing this issue of this bill. There are so many products in this country that the same source, the same providers are the ones that dominate the entire industries. The same issue came here on TSA. TSA is similar things, where they don't allow the pipe to be open for other competitors that led to protest. At the end of the day, led to the termination of TSA as a product for CBN. So I feel this bill came at the right time to address all the spectrums, all the marketing areas that concern with monopolist tendency. Because monopoly create high prices, they don't create competition. Competition create price differentials and make products more accessible and available to people. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Senator Joshua Ledani.
Thank you, Mr. President. My name is Joshua Lidani, representing Gombe South. I rise to lend my support to this all-important bill. This bill seeks to take into account new trends in commerce and in consumerism. The present law, that is the Consumer Protection Council Act, is very inadequate and is becoming obsolete. And therefore, this bill is coming at a very good time. It will take into account the various innovations in commerce and also provide solutions to the problem that consumers are facing, especially with substandard products. The bill is novel in the sense that it, for the first time, criminalizes issue of monopolies by either suppliers or dealers. Presently, the situation is that dealers can connive and decide, connive among themselves and undercut the suppliers, whereas suppliers will toil and produce goods and services. The dealers will connive and undercut the suppliers so that they will be feeding fat on the suppliers at the expense of the product they produce. So this bill is coming at a good time because it will criminalize that conduct and also ensure that people will not form themselves into a cartel and monopolize a certain trade or monopolize trading in certain goods and services. The other thing that I noticed is novel is the issue of the Federal Competition Commission. We know that there are a lot of companies presently who always believe that they can undercut their rivals.
Otaru Salu, he's the government and the people of Kogi State. Thank you, sir.
Distinguished colleagues, Senator Gimby brought this to my attention, and I'm sure a number of us here have either worked with him closely or have encountered him. I know my last encounter with Senator Eze showed him truly a patriotic and committed politician. I think at that time there was the issue of the seat, and there was crisis in Kogi State, and I called himself and Ohere, asking him, pleading to him to step down for the sake of peace, and he agreed to step down at that time with the promise that when government is formed, he will get any position. And that was how we had peace in Kogi Central. So I think he's a man that has served the country well, and I believe in distinguished because we all stand up a minute's silence in honor of this great gentleman.
Welcome to the live transmission of the National Assembly Senate from the Nigerian Television Authority live. As we have said earlier, the Senate was in closed-door session and executive session. Now they are back. At the moment, they are mourning the demise of a former senator from Kogi Central. This is now they're going on the 1 minute silence in his honor. And after that, well, okay, they are now back. And as we have said earlier, one report is expected to be considered, which is that of the INEC, with INEC Act number 6, 2010 Amendment Bill. And then after that, there are about 12 bills that will be considered. So once again, we welcome you to this live transmission. Happy viewing.
Go ahead and read.
By the indulgence of the Senate and the leave of the President of the Senate, a senator may make a personal explanation, although there be no question before the Senate. But no controversial matter may be brought forward, nor may debate arise upon the explanation. The terms of the proposed statement shall be submitted in detail to the President of the Senate when his leave to make it is sought. Mr. President, sir, distinguished colleagues, it's with heavy heart I stand today before this chamber to announce the death of our father, His Royal Highness Alhaji Dr. Hamman Gabro Muhammad Sambo, MFR, Lamdo Gashaka, on Saturday, 22nd October 2016, at the ripe age of 80 years. Lamdo Gashaka then, he started work as a district scribe of Adamawa Native Authority, Councillor, Gashaka Mambila Native Authority, and elected member, Northern House of Assembly, Kaduna, 1962 to 1964. This was after the plebiscite. All right. I said he was a member House of Assembly in Kaduna between 1962 and 1964. He was Taban District Head of Gashaka in 1965. The same year, Lex Ahmad Bello, former Premier of Northern Nigeria, blessed memory, appointed him as a member of House of Chiefs. He was made third class by the governor of the former Gongola State, Colonel M.D. Jega, in 1977, and made first class chief in 2006 by the then civilian governor of Taraba State, John Inyame. Because he had national honors as member of Federal Republic in 2002 and got a doctorate degree LLD by University of Washington, USA in 2003. He was awarded ECOWAS Peace Award, to mention a few. He maintained peace and stability throughout his reign by accommodating various tribes and religions in his domain from neighboring local areas of Taraba State. His Royal Highness Mangabra Muhammad Sambo was a towering community figure, an active politician, philanthropist, selfless and humanitarian par excellence, who will be greatly missed for his humility. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, accordingly, I request for an observance of 1 minute silence in honor of His Royal Highness Alhaji Hamman Gabro Muhammad Sambo Lamdo Gashkat, and condole his family and the good people of Taraba State. Thank you very much.
Distinguished colleagues, in honor of an astute royal father, I think we should observe 1 minute silence. And the father of our colleague. The father of our colleague, as our own father. May gentle soul rest in perfect peace. Amen. Deputy Senate President.
Thank you, Mr. President. Very distinguished colleagues. I rise under Orders 42 and 52 of the Senate Standing Order 2015 as amended. With the permission of His Excellency, the Senate President and the distinguished Senate, let me read.
Go ahead.
The matter for discussion shall, if possible, be referred to the President of the Senate before commencement of the day sitting, and the President of the Senate shall refuse to allow the claim unless he is satisfied that the matter is definite and urgent. Order 52 says that notice shall not be dispensed with in the case of a motion or in respect of any proceeding for which notice is required except with the consent of the President of the Senate and the General Assembly of the Senators present. I'd like, therefore, to seek indulgence to enable myself and the indefatigable leader of the Senate to bring a motion regarding the inconclusive elections in Rivers State. We had cause to discuss this matter on the 27th of September, and we have reason to come back to this very distinguished Senate to seek for further resolution.
Distinguished colleagues, in line with our rules, the Deputy Senate President did bring this matter, and so I put the question to seek the leave that we grant this. Those in favor that we listen to this motion say aye. Aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. Deputy Senate President.
Thank you, Mr. President, distinguished colleagues. The Senate will observe that in spite of our resolution, Senate Resolution 016/002/16 of 27th day of September 2016, calling on the INEC to immediately conclude all pending rerun elections in the country. INEC has failed, refused, and or neglected to conduct rerun elections in Rivers State into the Senate, House of Representatives, and State House of Assembly. We also observe that the failure of INEC to conduct the rerun elections in Rivers State within the time frame ordered by the respective election petition tribunals and the courts is in breach of the Electoral Act and Section 76 of the 1999 Constitution, thus endangering the nation's democracy. Further observes that non-representation of the entire people of Rivers State in the Senate and some constituencies of Rivers State in the House of Representatives and State Assembly is in breach of Section 14(2)(c) of the 1999 Constitution, which enjoins the participation of every part of this country in the governance of Nigeria. And this endangers peace and order in Rivers State. Further observes the failure of INEC to conduct elections in Rivers State has continued to deny the people of Rivers State their constitutionally guaranteed rights to be represented in legislative houses where laws affecting them are being made, and has endangered probable anxiety amongst people of the state. Aware that INEC has successfully conducted elections in the northeast of Nigeria, especially in the areas around the Sambisa forest, in spite of the area having been acknowledged worldwide to be ravaged by terrorist activities. Also aware that INEC recently conducted what they called a successful election in Edo State, even after security advice from police and DSS forced rescheduling of the election date. Further aware, the elections were held in Bayelsa State in spite of the government acknowledged threats of militant activities that necessitated provision of additional security personnel in the state for the elections. Before I go to the prayer, let me say strictly that this motion is about the need for the participation of all states in the governance of this country. It is certainly not an indictment on the INEC or its leadership. I have absolute confidence in the chairman and members of the Independent National Electoral Commission. But I believe that every state is entitled under the Constitution to be represented in this Senate. I therefore move that this Senate do resolve to call on the Independent National Electoral Commission to conduct all outstanding elections in Rivers State before the end of November 2016, failing which the Senate will suspend plenary till such a time the state elections are held and the people of Rivers State are represented in the respective legislative houses. We so move.
Point of order, Senator Shafar.
Your Excellency, distinguished colleagues, I stand on Order 53, that is Chapter 8, Rules of Debate. 53.8. Yes. May I read, sir?
Yeah, read.
No senator shall impute improper motives to any other senator. Your Excellency, while my very good friend and boss, His Excellency, the Deputy Senate President, was presenting the earlier motion, he imputed an improper motive by saying the so-called successful election. I need protection now. I need your protection, Mr. President.
Let him finish now. Okay. Yes, point of order is noted. Leader of the Senate.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. Distinguished colleagues, I'm Mohammed Ali Ndume, representing Borno South. My colleague has just made a little observation. I am a co-sponsor of this bill, and we had an issue on that sentence too. But my colleague agreed that there is an improvement on the previous one. The PDP government were known to be conducting selection, and we are doing so-called election. So that is how you were selected. That's how you were selected. So having said that, my distinguished colleagues, we all know it is not the content, but the intent of this motion and the urgency in it. We all know. When we come here, we combine jokes with seriousness, but we should know the difference between the jokes and whatever interpretation that we may give. You can imagine today we are about to discuss PIB without any member from Rivers State. You can imagine our colleagues that were seated with us here conducted election, they believe they won, somebody elsewhere thinks that they didn't win, but the truth of the matter is that any one of us here could have been in that position. Let us remember this, that whatever happens to you, you should think of another person. If it is our colleague from Rivers today, it can be you any day. You can imagine if for whatever reason, for example, myself, who have been a victim and our people have been a victim of insurgency, if election were not conducted, I would not be here. And I won't talk less of being the Senate leader. How would it be for my people who are ravaged by insurgency, not to have even somebody to say or to tell you people or my colleagues what is actually on ground? Just imagine the motions we raised that even led to now the creation of or the passage of the bill on the Northeast Development Commission. How we lobbied you, our colleagues, to unanimously support this bill. Our colleagues are there, out there, And you cannot genuinely even say it is their fault. But and the second fear, distinguished colleagues, is that we have a new leadership in INEC. And we know the history now. Inconclusive, suspension, and confusion sometimes. And we have to do something. Very soon, we'll be preparing for the whole general election. If we cannot conduct one election in Rivers, I know there are problems in Rivers, but election was held. We have a government that is capable. It is not that this government is not capable or doesn't have the resolve or the will to conduct the election. But the voice should come out from here, just as it is everywhere, that it is even better to take a wrong decision than not to take a decision at all. In view of that, my distinguished colleagues, I just want you to go to the prayers. Thank you very much.
Senator Matthew Rogidi, you wanted to say something?
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I am Senator Matthew Urogide. I represent Edo South Central District from Edo State. Mr. President, my distinguished colleagues, at times when our situations present, there is a need for us to address ourselves to the seriousness of the practice of democracy in Nigeria. When we want to define democracy, we say it's government of the people, by the people, for the people. And then, of course, we know, too, that we are practicing representative democracy in Nigeria today. And there are provisions in our constitution, too, that, of course, support the price of democracy in this country. Just like this motion, too, has spelled out that section 14, 2C. What INEC has done is in complete breach of the provision of this section. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, there is no other way we can impute inhuman treatment to any person or any segment of this country than what INEC is currently doing in Rivers State. To say that they are our colleagues, in fact, it's an understatement. We are saying the people of Rivers State. The entire people of Rivers State are not represented in National Assembly right now. I think it's an anathema. I think, too, it's inhuman. And this House, this Senate, or the National Assembly as a whole, cannot sit back and have this country to tolerate this inhuman treatment. And for this reason, Mr. President, I am saying that I support this motion. INEC should be called to order. This is not the time we have to toy with the lives of people on the note of unacceptable partisanship or favoritism that is given to any government or any segment of this country. So I ask, that INEC be called, and within this specified period of time, I even believe 1 month is too much.
When we get to the prayer, you can comment on that. And then we go to the prayers. I think there's only one prayer, is there? Prayer. You hereby resolve to call on the Independent National Electoral Commission INEC to conduct all outstanding elections in Rivers State before the end of November 2016. Failing which, the Senate will suspend plenary to such a time the said elections are held and the people of Rivers State are represented in the respective legislative houses. Point of order, Senator Dino-Melaye.
Mr. President, my colleagues, Dino-Melaye, Kogi West Senatorial District. Mr. President, I want to draw the attention of this respected chamber to constitutional point of order, section 14, 2C of the Constitution. If I have the permission of the President.
Read, go ahead.
The participation by the people in their government shall be ensured in accordance with the provisions of this Constitution. Section 147(3). Any appointment under subsection 2 of this Constitution by the President shall be in conformity with the provision of section 14(3) of this Constitution, provided that in giving effect to the provisions aforesaid, the President, fundamentally, I want us to take note of shall appoint at least one minister from each state who shall be an indigene of such state. Mr. President, we lost the minister from Kogi State on March 6th, 2006. For 8 months now, Kogi is without a minister. While I support the motion by the Deputy Senate President, I also raise this as a matter of the Constitution, that in the prayers of this motion, that the issue of minister that the Constitution have described as shall, that Kogi people economically, socially, and politically, that we have been excluded for the past 8 months. This is very fundamental, it is germane, and it should be treated as so.
All right, Senator Dinomlai, I think you will have come under something else. On this one, I have to rule you out of order. When the prayer comes, you can lobby for that. Yes, you had an amendment. There was an amendment to this. Yeah, Senator Mao.
Mr. President, Mr. President, distinguished senators, my name is Senator Mao Arukwe, representing the people of Abia North Senatorial District. Mr. President, while commending the effort of distinguished Senator Ike Kurema, Deputy Senate President Iko Handibo, and Senator Mohamed Ali Ndume for bringing this all-important motion, because it is very clear that we are sitting on a keg of gunpowder on this constitutional breach. And we wouldn't want to let them also allow us go into another constitutional breach. I want to crave the indulgence of the Deputy Senate President to say that in this one prayer motion, my amendment should be that instead of suspending plenary, which is our constitutional right, I think we should suspend considering all executive bills until these elections are conducted, instead of saying we suspend plenary. That is my... That is...
This distinguished colleague, wait, are you coming as an amendment? Okay, any seconder? No. So let me put this, there's still one prayer here. Any other information, Senator Abukari?
Thank you very much, Mr. President. My name is Senator Abubakar Kari, representing Borno North and chairman of INEC Committee. Your Excellency, distinguished colleagues, in as much as I support in its entirety this motion that was brought by the Deputy Senate President, the Senate leader, from our own point of view, the committee's position, we have already approached INEC on this regard, and INEC the chairman has promised us that the election will take place on the 10th of December. This is the information that I want to relay to my colleagues. And based on that information, I think that will guide us properly on the issue of the last prayer. Thank you, Your Excellency.
Okay. Let's take this first prayer first, then. Let me put the question on this first prayer. The distinguished colleagues, Deputy Senate President, with this information from the chairman, do you have any amendment to your prayer, or you want to leave your prayer as it is?
Well, this is coming from the chairman, and let's take him by his words. So let us now resolve that it must be held on that 10th of December, yes, following which that action will take place. Yes.
Okay, so can we? So what will be? Can you give us the new prayer that has amended? Call on.
That should be the election in Rivers State be held not later than 10th of December. Not later 10th of December, following which we have to suspend plenary because we are not properly constituted.
Yes.
Distinguished colleagues, any seconder to this amendment? Yes, Senator Baribe.
Mr. President, my highly distinguished colleagues, my name is Einaya Baribe, and I represent the good people of Abia South. I stand to second the motion as amended by our Iko Handibo that INEC do conduct the elections into Rivers State not later than 10th of December, failing which we will suspend plenary as enunciated in the motion. I so second.
Distinguished colleagues, those in favor of the prayer call on the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, to conduct all outstanding elections in Rivers State not later than 10th of December, on failing which the Senate will suspend plenary to such a time the said elections are held. Those in favor of this prayer say aye. Aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. Any additional prayer? Yes, Senator Dino.
Mr. President, my colleagues, my additional prayer is that in line with the motion that urge the federal government to appoint a substantive minister from Kogi State.
Any seconder to this motion? Senator Bayo.
I will second you, don't worry. Mr. President, my name is Usman Bayero Nafada Gombenot. I hereby second the motion as moved by my distinguished colleague, Senator D.
Distinguished colleagues, those in favor of the additional prayers to urge the federal government to urgently or immediately appoint a minister for Kogi State, say aye. Aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. Distinguished colleagues, I want to thank the Deputy Senate President and the Leader of the Senate for bringing this very, very important motion. This motion, as you all know, is so important because it all goes down to our democracy and the dangers that is portrayed. I think we will take the information given by the chairman of INEC to communicate to INEC the need that they must hold to this date they are given. I think all of us were here when the chairman of INEC came here during his screening, and I think we're all very impressed with his performance. And I think that it is up to him now to really, this is a very challenging time for him and his organization. And I think he needs to really ensure that the INEC stays on the right course. And I think this will be a very big test. He has given his word, and we have accepted his word, and they should ensure that this election does take place, because it also endangers all the stuff, all the things that we are doing here if a particular state is not well represented. Thank you. Leader of the Senate.
Mr. President and my distinguished colleagues, in a related development, the first order of the day is the presentation and consideration of the report of the Committee on INEC of the INEC Act Amendment Bill 2016. Distinguished senators will recall that the report of the committee was laid on the first day of November 2016. Mr. President, you may wish to invite distinguished Senator Abubakar Kari, chairman of the committee, to move the motion for the presentation and consideration of the report.
Senator Abubakar.
Thank you, Mr. President. Distinguished colleagues, my name is Senator Abubakar Kari, representing Borno North. I would like to move the motion that the Senate do consider the report of the Committee on INEC on the INEC Act Amendment Bill 2016, SB 231 and SB 234. I so move.
Senator Geshambasi.
Thank you, Mr. President. Geshambasi, Cross River South Senatorial District. I stand to second the motion ably moved by Senator Abu Kiari.
Distinguished colleagues, those in favor that the Senate do consider the report of the Committee on INEC On the INEC Act Amendment Bill 2016, SB 231, SB 234, say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. Senator Bukeri.
Your Excellency, Senate President, distinguished colleagues, once again, I am Abubakar Kari, Senator representing Borno North. Of course, Your Excellency, distinguished colleagues, we have a very extensive report, but I'm going to abridge. I have an abridged version, and it's very important that I go through this report so that I can inform my colleagues. This is a report of the Senate Committee on Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, which is here referred as the committee, on 2 orders of the referral of this 8th Senate of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. The referrals are in respect of A, Electoral Act Number 6, 2010, Amendment Bill 2016, SB 231, sponsored by distinguished Senator Tijani Y. Gaura, and B, Independent National Electoral Commission Bill 2016, SB 234, sponsored by distinguished Senator Ubali Shitu. The Senate referred the 2 bills to the committee for further legislative action and to report back with recommendations after taking the second reading of each bill at its plenary sitting of March 17, 2016. Below is the membership of the committee. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, the distinguished Senators Tijani Gaura and Ubali Shitu sponsored Senate Bills 231, SB 231 and 234 respectively to amend the Electoral Act Number 6, 2010 as amended, to cure certain mischiefs identified by them in our electoral system. This commendable initiative by the 2 distinguished senators touches squarely on the Senate's legislative agenda on comprehensive electoral reform. Ultimately, the objective of the Senate's agenda on electoral reform is to update, clarify, strengthen our electoral laws so that they can respond adequately to current and evolving realities and challenges in the national socio-political space. Comprehensive electoral reform will help INEC to deliver greater efficiencies and lead to transparent, credible, and generally acceptable electoral outcomes. This is the bedrock of democratic stability and sustenance. Proper electoral reform often creates huge positive multiplier impacts in terms of good public governance. It requires a broad legislative action founded on detailed, careful study, review, and amendment of relevant laws. In our case, the key laws to review and amend are the Electoral Act and the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, 1999, as amended. In terms of purpose, electoral reform will enable us to build an enduring national electoral system that has the requisite capacity and integrity to deliver free, fair, and credible elections in line with the global best practices. It requires an extraordinary spirit of courage, patriotism, and selflessness. To achieve meaningful electoral reform, we must put the nation first. The committee is honored to serve this Senate in these regards. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, may I at this point comment summarily on the bills referred to the committee. In all, both bills were intended to make 6 amendments to the Electoral Act. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, in carrying out this very important assignment, the committee held several meetings to extensively review and enrich the referred bills. These meetings were avenues to review electoral processes, specific laws, and events with electoral coloration. The committee considered past and contemporary experiences, challenges, tools, and methods in relation to the management of elections by national election bodies. We examined successful legislative processes in some national jurisdictions with respect to electoral reforms and legal framework. During these meetings, distinguished senators made inputs that are consistent with the overall objective of reforming, elevating, and increasing the efficiency of our national electoral system in order for it to earn greater public confidence. Arising from these meetings and guided by a compelling need to elevate electoral standards in our nation, the committee decided to adopt a holistic approach to its legislative action on the referred bills by A, organizing a summit on elections for a broad-based public consultation on electoral reform ahead of the 2019 general elections, by obtaining expert and non-expert views and advice from stakeholders and members of the public that will feed into the generally desired amendment Electoral Act and related laws, and very importantly, reduce to the barest minimum chances of ambiguity and conflicts in our electoral jurisprudence and outcomes at electoral litigations by evolving a more generally acceptable electoral law. B, collating inputs and memoranda arising from the Summit on Elections. And C, holding further meetings of the committee. And we also consulted technical teams and other experts from the academia. The Summit of Elections, Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, consistent with the methodology we adopted, the committee organized the summit, in which the President of the Senate, His Excellency Senator Dr. Bukola Saraki, personally attended and opened the summit. The Senate President was joined by the Deputy Senate President, His Excellency Senator Dr. Ike Ikuremadu, and the Speaker of the House of Representatives, the Right Honorable Yakubu Dogara, ably represented by the Chairperson, House Committee on Electoral Matters. The summit provided an important platform for leaders, practitioners, professionals, stakeholders, and the general public to present memoranda and oral submissions on the amendment of the Electoral Act and chart a roadmap for comprehensive electoral reform and the management of elections in Nigeria. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, the summit was incisive, and in terms of specific outcomes, one, those items that the summit deliberated on, A, is the use of the smart card readers and other technological devices for elections. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, there was a consensus on the necessity of legislative action on INEC's use of smart card readers and other innovative election management devices and technologies in our elections. A plethora of judicial pronouncements up to the Supreme Court of Nigeria have particularly made this issue a bounden duty on the National Assembly, especially in the case of Wheat and Peterside. It's already stated there. Your Excellency, the second one is where a candidate dies before the announcement of results. Of course, we know what happened in Kogi. The other issue is also the issue of direct primaries. Nigerians want true internal democracy in our political parties. They want a more open democratic party system that actively engages the participation of party members in party primaries. They want direct primaries where party members freely elect their candidates in order to limit systematic overbearing control of few persons on the outcomes of primaries. The other aspect is the qualification of persons to contest elections. It was submitted that the Constitution provides very clear qualification criteria to be satisfied by political aspirants and candidates. Explicit disqualification criteria are also stated in the Constitution. However, extraneous conditions under the pretext of quote-unquote qualifications criteria are often applied by political parties, the tribunals, and courts, and sometimes controlled state apparatus to disqualify aspirants, candidates, or winners of elections, thus subordinating the Constitution, the very ground norm of the land, to party rules, inferior statutes, and whims and caprices of coercive state machinery. This is argued is an anathema in our constitutional democracy and must stop. Therefore, it was suggested that Section 138 of the Electoral Act requires amendment to clarify and restrict the qualification or disqualification of a person for an elective office provided under the provisions of Sections 65, 106, 131, and 177 of the Constitution in terms of qualification, and Sections 66, 107, 137, and 187 of the Constitution in terms of disqualification. The other important aspect that was also taken at the summit is the issue of the independent candidacy. It was submitted that a citizen's personal character, qualifications, experiences, patriotism, and public support are the true measurements of public service readiness, not political party membership, necessarily. It was further noted that the tenets, freedom, and liberty impose an obligation on truly democratic nations not to limit political participation of citizens to partisanship by foreclosing independent candidacy. That the fundamental essence of independent candidacy is to open the political space beyond partisan interest to individual citizens who have leadership strengths to deliver for the good of the nation, but not necessarily within political parties. Section 65, subsection 2b, and Section 106, subsection D, 131, subsection C, and 177, subsection C, and 142, subsection 1 and 122 of the Constitution requires amendment in this regard. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, I shall return to the issues requiring constitutional amendments later in the report. Though identified by the committee, they are nonetheless outside our mandate. F, the issue of avoiding rerun elections, issuance of certificates of return to first runner-up. Another aspect is the avoiding the rerun elections in terms of inspection of sample of ballots by political parties and agents. H, time frame of conduct of rerun elections. And one other important issue which has been coming up in the past is the issue of unbundling of INEC. It was discussed that INEC as an institution is saddled with unduly burdensome responsibilities outside its core constitutional mandate of conducting elections. Therefore, it has become necessary to enact laws as well as amend the Electoral Act and the Constitution to streamline the functions of INEC to the conduct of elections. To this end, it is now necessary to enact a new law establishing an Electoral Offences Commission to investigate and prosecute electoral offences and for more For more effective voter mobilization, it has also become necessary to amend Sections 3 and 4 of the National Orientation Agency Act to specifically mandate the National Orientation Agency, NOA, to undertake the additional function of mobilizing voters for elections. It needs to be emphasized that voter mobilization is a separate and distinct function from civic and voter education, which is inextricably tied to INEC being a sensitive electoral function relating directly to electoral materials, which are within the exclusive purview of INEC. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, it needs to be emphasized that the proposed Electoral Offences Commission will not, of necessity, be a new cost center, as INEC is divested of the function to be assigned to this body. So will INEC be divested of funds hitherto meant for such functions. The other aspect is the extension of timelines for electoral matters. It's also included in the bill. And also the AGF's power, the Attorney General of Federation's power of nolly prosecute inapplicable to electoral offenses. Number L is court sanctions of breach of tribunals. M, clarity of overvoting. N, compliance with INEC's election manuals. And O, another important aspect is the secured transmission of polling unit results. It was discussed that for the integrity of the election process, it is necessary to have requisite checks and balances in INEC's vote reporting system. It is for this reason that it was suggested that sections 49 and 63 of the Electoral Act should be amended to mandate secured electronic transmission of accreditation data, votes, and election results from the polling units to INEC's collation centers and central database, and mandate each level of collation to accept only accreditation data, votes, and results that are consistent with those transmitted from the unit or reinstate them if manipulated. Further, it was observed that audio-visual recording of the accreditation of voters, counting of votes, and collation and announcement of results at polling units will increase transparency and provide compelling corroborative evidence of the truth or falsity of election results. This is to check instances where ballot boxes are snatched and results are written and announced in places other than designated places. The amendment is also to provide a time frame for INEC to shut down its central database after an election and introduce criminal penalties for failure to comply with proposed amendments. P, the issue of also the early submission of candidates to INEC is also included in the bill. Furthermore, participants at the summit urged the National Assembly to consider and accordingly amend the Electoral Act and/or the Constitution in respect of voting by Nigerians in the diaspora, prisoners, security personnel engaged during elections, and Nigerians engaged as electoral officers during elections, and determination of election petition on merit only, and a code of conduct for election observers. Observation, Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, without question, Nigerians overwhelmingly support bold, comprehensive legislative actions on electoral reform. They demand that this 8th Senate lead the way on electoral reform and come up with a modern and better electoral law altogether, one that would deliver credible electoral outcomes through processes that are sustainable and consistent with global best practices, on whose spirit and letters would promote the emergence of true, credible, and popular Nigerian leaders through free, fair, and credible elections. Our findings, Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, the gravamen of SB 231 is to solidly ground the smart card reader in the Electoral Act as an approved election tool for the purpose of accreditation of voters. On the other hand, SB 234 is a response to 5 specific issues as highlighted in paragraph 3.6. Weighed against the totality of the several outcomes of and litany of submissions and suggestions made at the Summit on Elections, it is quite clear that there is need to broaden the scope of 231 and 234 with regards to the Senate's legislative agenda for electoral reform and expectations of Nigerians. Herein lies the very task of the committee. Recommendations. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, the committee received proposed amendments to 6 distinct sections of the Electoral Act in SB 231 and SB 234 taken together. Upon a thorough distillation of the major issues that are germane to comprehensive electoral reform and a careful consideration and consolidation of SB 231 with SB 234, the committee has come up with a single enriched bill with proposed amendments to 25 sections of the Electoral Act, including new sections. With humility and for the greater good of our republic, the committee recommends that all amendments contained in the draft bill accompanying this report for passage by the Senate. As I move to conclude, may I humbly highlight some specific recommendations. A, Clause 2, Section 2 of SB 234 amends Section 8 of the Electoral Act by inserting a new subsection 5, which prescribes imprisonment of at least 5 years or a fine of at least 5 million or both for a member of a political party who is guilty of misrepresenting himself in order to secure an appointment with INEC. Section and B, Clause 6, Section 3 of SB 234 amends Section 36 of the Electoral Act by inserting a new subsection 3, which provides for the substitution of a candidate of a political party who dies before the declaration of the result of an election with the first runner-up in the party's primaries, which was won by the deceased candidate. Clause 7, Section 4 of SB 234 on the amendment of Section 38 of the Electoral Act was deleted as it is in conflict with Sections 132, subsection 3, and 178, subsection 3 of the Constitution. Clause 10, Section 2 of SB 231 amends Section 49 of the Electoral Act with regards to the use of smart card readers and other technological devices for elections by INEC. The use of the word techno and other technological devices is not to tie the smart card reader to a specific name. Smart card means it only reads card, but when we attach other technological devices, it also gives INEC a wide variety of choice. Clause 17, Section 5 of SB 234 amends subsection 78, subsection 5 of the Electoral Act with regards to provision of false and misleading information by an association to INEC for the purpose of registration as a political party. F, Clause 18, Section 6 of SB 234 amends Section 87 of the Electoral Act by substituting for the existing section a new Section 87 altogether. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, let me say at once that this bill has much more. It is comprehensive and detailed. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, I indicated in paragraph 6.2 above, some of the issues ventilated by Nigerians at the Summit on Elections and reviewed by the committee require constitutional reviews or amendments. In that regard, the committee recommends that this Senate refers the matters stated separately in Appendix A to the Constitution Review Committee for consideration and further action. On diaspora voting and voting by prisoners, it is the committee's view that there should be further study on these matters in view of the logistical challenges envisaged. The question of voting by electoral officials and security personnel during elections also requires further study, particularly given the statutory demands of the neutrality imposed on election officials under Section 28 of the Electoral Act. Finally, we wish to use this opportunity to thank the President of the Senate, members of our committee, our distinguished colleagues, for the opportunity to serve in this capacity. We humbly recommend the passage of this bill to the Senate so that our democracy will be strengthened. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Chairman. If there are no specific comments, we can go to Committee of the Whole to take clause by clause. Yes. Leader of the Senate.
Mr. President and my distinguished colleague, may I now move that the Senate revert to Committee of the Whole for the purpose of consideration of the report. I so move.
Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, I rise to second the motion that the Senate do revert into a Committee of the Whole to consider clause by clause this very important bill.
Distinguished colleagues, those in favor that the Senate hereby resolve the Committee of the Whole consider this report clause by clause, please say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. Distinguished colleagues, let me help us. There are 28 clauses. They have numbered the clauses in the first column. The first column, you start from page 2. You see the first column there starting has a numbering. That's 1, 2. So anytime I say clause 1, those are the numbers I'm going with, the first columns. And then the recommendations is the third column. Okay? So there are 28 clauses. So clause 1, which is saying retained. So if you're all with me, I will start then. Those in favor that clause 1 stands part of the bill say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. Clause 2. Clause 2, yes. Leader.
So clause 2 is a very good job, but it appears that it will be neater if we say a person who, being a member of a political party, misrepresent himself by not disclosing his membership, affiliation, or connection to any political party in order to secure an appointment with the Commission in any capacity, commits an offense and shall be liable on conviction to an imprisonment term of at least. So we said, instead of that, we say an imprisonment for a term of 5 years,
a term of 5 years or a fine of 5 million naira or both such fine and imprisonment. That's how it. Sir? What technically what the amendment is trying to remove is at least. So at least appear not too elegant. So what we say is that liable to a term of 5 years, an imprisonment term of 5 years, or a fine of 5 million naira, or both such fine and imprisonment. No, at least. Yeah.
Anybody seconding the amendment? Senator Samayon.
Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, my name is Senator Sam Anyang. I represent Imo East. I second the amendment as proposed by the leader. I so.
Distinguished colleagues, the amendment to that is just to remove the word "at least." So those in favor of it will be 5 years or a fine of 5 million or both. Okay. Distinguished colleagues, those in favor of that. Oh, yeah, go ahead, James Manjo.
I know my learned friend, my colleague, the deputy leader of the Senate is a lawyer like me, but you need to give the judges the discretionary power. When you say at least 5 years, you are saying that it will not go down below 5 years. But when you remove the at least, then you are tying the hands of the judge. And so I think it's better you leave it at least 5 years, because the offenses also vary from one particular offense to another. So I think the way it is, in my humble view, is reasonable. Or not less than. Or not less than. Not less than.
I've already put the question. So if let us put it and then we just, very simple. Those in favor that section 5 be amended as proposed by leader and seconded by Samayin, say aye. Those against say nay. Nay. The ayes have it. This is page 3. Still on page 3. Clause 3, page 3. Yes, Senator Mao.
I want to come by way of motion to ask that we revisit what the decision we had taken. Because you see, why I'm bringing this issue, we are making a law. There is somebody who will come as a national commissioner and he will give a wrong information. There is somebody at the local level who will come as a polling clerk who will give a wrong information. You don't expect him to have the same level of punishment as somebody who comes to say as a national commissioner and gives a wrong information. Yes. I believe that saying at least 5 years, give the judge a discretion. It can take you, if you are as a PO, you can be asked for 5 years or thereabout. If you come as a national commissioner, you can be asked to go for 10, 20 years. I mean, so if,
distinguished colleagues, Senator, well, I had put the question, and to my own best assessment of that, I felt that the AS carried the day. But if you want, if for us to be considered, we can put the question again, to so that everybody is satisfied. Okay, those in favor. No, there's. Let's put the question and make it. Distinguished colleagues, I'll put the question a second time. Those in favor of the amendment as proposed by the leader, that the word "at least" should be deleted, say aye. Aye. Those against say nay. Nay. The nays have it. Clause 3. Clause 3. Yes, Acting Chief Whip.
Mr. President, my name is Barnabas Gamade, Benue Northeast. The language of clause 3
1A that indicates that the National Register of Voters in its national headquarters. I think it's maybe just a topographical, but for language, I think it's good to put headquarters. Headquarters instead of headquarter.
Headquarter. I can Secretary, I just take note of that. Any other comment? Clause 3, before I put the question. Yes, Senator Yusuf.
Mr. Chairman, I had experience of this during my own case. My experience is that this voters register should not go beyond state headquarters, because they say other location as commission may determine, they may take it to local government headquarters. So my suggestion is that at its national headquarters and state headquarters. Because if they take it to local government headquarters, there have been problems, there have been manipulations. That's my experience.
This amendment. No, if there's no, is there a seconder to the amendment? Any other, so I can put the question on clause 3. You have an objection to clause 3?
I don't know how to look at this matter. We are drafting law, sir. This clause 3, sir. If you look at the entire drafting of this, and then you look at the necessary intendment, you will get more confused at what the legislators want to say. And I keep on saying this because in legislative drafting, you need to be clear enough so that when people approach the court, at least they have a fair assessment of what is going to become of what the judges will say. Now, look at what this one said. After 1A, it says, provided that the commission shall keep the register of voters in, it says A, and then went and said and then B, it gave the condition and say and. In law, once you use and, everything must be read conjunctively. So if it is to be read conjunctively, where lies the wisdom of sectorizing into A, B, C, and D? I don't understand.
So your suggestion. Make a suggestion.
Move and turn it the other way around. You see. I said, in order to make it a little bit elegant, we can say the commission shall keep the national register of voters in its national headquarters, or such other locations as from time to time may be determined by the commission. Then B, the commission shall have power to determine the manner and form of keeping the records of register of voters, which shall include but not limited to electronic format, hard copy, and such other forms of keeping record as circumstances may permit. This is my own proposal.
Information.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What the Senate leader has just proposed more or less gives the discretion to INEC to determine in what format the register is to be kept. But the intendment of this provision is to mandate it in that very form, electronic and, not all, electronic and manual. So in the event of any conflict, we present both. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Those in favor that clause 3 stands part of the bill say aye. Aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. Clause 4. Those in favor that clause 4 stands part of the bill say aye. Aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. Page 4, clause 5. Clause 5, yes, Senator Moro.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Distinguished colleagues, my name remains Umar Ibrahim Kufi, representing Kaduna Central. Clause 5, we'll go to clause B, where it says, failure to display or publish the voters register and provided under section 1 of this section shall constitute an offense for which any official or staff of the commission responsible for such the vote shall be guilty and liable, or conviction to imprisonment for a term of 6 months, or a fine of 100,000 naira, or both. We should add or both.
Page 5. Let's take the 19. The 19 is on page 5 already, which is part of the clause 5. Is there any other observations before that subsection there, subsection 4? No, we're on clause 5. Yes, but clause 5 has 2 parts. He's already on the next part. And that's why I was asking the question. I'll put the question, does anybody have any observation before we turn to the next page? No, okay, then let's take the point he's now raised. We're now on page 5. No, you've read. We are clear with the point you're making. Does anybody agree what he's suggesting? Senator Kurfi, do you want to come back and
Thank you very much. What the last thing is 6 months fine or 100,000 naira or both. That's exactly what it is. Or both. The word or both should be added. Have you seen it? Add or both.
Yeah, Senator Hope Ozodima. Yeah, it's seconded now.
I rise to second the motion ever moved by distinguished Senator Kofi, that the clause 4 be amended to read imprisonment for a term of 6 months or a fine of 100,000 naira or both. I so second.
Distinguished colleagues, those in favor that clause 5 as amended stands part of bill say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. Clause 6. Yeah, Senator Binta.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Binta Masigarba, Adama, North Senatorial Zone. Mr. Chairman, I think we need to be to get some clarification on clause 5(1), subject to the provision of this section 9(5) of this act. The Commission shall, not later than 30 days, to a general election, appoint a period of 7 days, during which a copy of the voters' register for each local government, area council, or ward shall be displayed or published for public scrutiny at every registration area on its official website or any website established by the Commission for this purpose, for that purpose. And if you looked at 5(1)(a), upon displaying or publishing of voters' register in accordance with this section, the Commission shall accept and consider objections and complaints in relation to the name omitted or included in the voters' register or in relation 14 days again. So you are taking 3 weeks out of the 30 days. And when will the INEC officials now make all these observations, alterations, and back again for another election within 30 days? 3 weeks. 1 is the display, 1 week for display, 2 weeks for observation, omission, and whatever. And when does it go back again for them to make the agreement?
Dabukir, do you want to comment?
Your Excellency, this provision actually is far much better than what we have existing now. What it's saying is that it's within those periods. I think there's enough time for you to view and submit.
The observation can be done on the first day. You can make the observation on the first day. You can make the observation even on the first day.
Yes. Can be done. The observation can be made on the first day. So it's where we are within, you have a window to to capture whatever observation that you want to take.
Yeah. I thought you also had one observation. Senator Kerry, I thought there was something that you wanted to tell us.
Just there's a typographical error in under clause 5.
Where?
When you have, there's supposed to be C, the one that Senator Kurfi amended, is supposed to be C, not B. We have A, and B is C is an insertion after subsection 3, a new subsection 4 as follows. So instead of B, it's supposed to be C.
All right, Secretary, I take note of that. Okay, so we're now in clause 6 now. Clause 6, Deputy Senate President.
Sir, I have a major problem with clause 6. Page 6, clause 6 at page 6, subparagraph, section 3. If after the commencement of poll and before the announcement of the final result and declaration of a winner, a nominated candidate dies, the Chief National Electoral Commissioner shall, being satisfied of the fact of the death, proceed with the election after allowing the political party whose candidate died to substitute the late candidate with the person who scored the highest number of lawful votes in the primaries, which was won by the deceased candidate, as if the substituted person was the candidate originally nominated by the party. The problem here, sir, is that I know what it's trying to address, but the problem here is that suppose that in the primaries there was only one candidate. Because in my own case, during the last election, I was turned unopposed in my senatorial district, the PDP primaries. Suppose that is the case, maybe in the election under review here, what happens? So I think they have to look at it. Probably the party should be given time to nominate another candidate.
Senator Barrow Jibril.
Mr. Chairman, sir, I also have a problem with 3, because I think that our Constitution is a fact. I'm not thinking it's a fact. Provides that once a president dies, the vice president becomes the president. And once a governor dies, the deputy governor becomes the governor. Now, we have a running mate here. I think we should use the same principle to allow the running mate to become the candidate.
No.
That's my own submission.
No.
Sir, I'm not either, sir. You know, politics is always based on collaboration and agreements. Probably the guy who died had an arrangement with the running mate and they worked together, and that's why he was able to win the election ab initio. And now depriving the running mate the chance to assume the candidature, I think is unfair. Because the guy who are going to take, the new person that the party might take, might not decide to go with the running mate. I think there's injustice here. We have to allow equity and justice in every legislation, sir.
Senator Magege.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First and foremost, let me make clear, Mr. President, that there's a specific mischief that we are seeking to address here, and that is the Kogi mischief. And we already have a pronouncement on that, by at the very least, by the Court of Appeal, by Supreme Court. We already have a pronouncement. Now, having said that, Mr. Chairman, the point raised by DSP is very, very important. This very provision does not envisage a situation where there's only one candidate, at the primary level. It envisages that there's somebody who took second and who took third. So I think we can accommodate the position of the DSP. But as for the position canvassed by my colleague Barrow, what Barrow is seeking to address is a situation where result has already been announced. But the mischief here, Mr. President, is before the announcement, specifically the Kogi situation. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Guma, you were saying you wanted to. You're okay now? Senator Lidani. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Joshua Lidani, representing from the South. I think to cure the problem raised by the DSP, I would like to propose as follows. Somebody propose it. After party, we can add, provided that where there was only one candidate during the party primaries, the party shall be allowed to nominate another candidate within 7 days. Yes, to nominate a replacement within 7 days.
Amendment. Can you repeat your amendment?
Okay, let me just read it. If after the commencement of poll and before the announcement of the final results and declaration of a winner, a nominated candidate dies, the Chief National Electoral Commissioner shall be satisfied of the fact of the death, proceed with the election after allowing the political party whose candidate died to substitute the late candidate with the person who scored the next highest number of local votes in the primaries, which was won by the deceased candidate, as if the substituted person was the candidate originally nominated by that party, provided that where there was only one candidate during the party primaries, the party shall be allowed to nominate a replacement within 7 days. Yeah, but it's left to the party. Let the party, by whatever means the party desires.
By Chief National Electoral Officer.
So how do they?
What do you mean by Chief National Electoral Officer?
Any seconder. Senator, are you seconding? Senator, are you seconding?
Mr. Chairman, I rise to second the motion ably moved by Senator Lidani that in the event where at the primaries there is only one candidate, the party shall be given the opportunity to conduct another primaries to produce. Wait now. Primary is the only way you produce a candidate, but it is to be done within 7 days. I so second.
Senator Moagege, that is a new amendment. The amendment by Senator Lidani just says that the party shall be allowed to nominate a candidate within 7 days. Now, your own amendment is now saying that the party should conduct a primaries within 7 days. So, is there any seconder to your own? Or let's put the question on the first one, because does not even have a seconder. Okay, any seconder to this one? Yeah. Huh? The Dani's one has died now. DSP.
Sir, we need some clarification, sir.
Sorry, sir. I think first, before I go to my suggestion, there's nothing like Chief National Electoral Commission in the first place. So let's forget about, so we have to say Independent Electoral Commission. Let's deal with the commission. Oh. There's no person called Chief National Electoral. We just said the Independent National Electoral Commission.
Yes, the Chief National Electoral Commissioner is the chairman of INEC. It's in the Electoral Act.
We can. Regarding the substantive issues, sir, there are two scenarios we need to look at. One is a scenario that had to do with presidential election and gubernatorial election on the one part, and then the other elections that had to do with the parliamentary. In the case of presidential and the gubernatorial election, I think the correct thing should be that the running mate should step into his shoes, because that's the intent of the law. And then thereafter nominate his deputy once they announce his result. Then for the other ones, the Electoral Act has provided that what you need to do is to postpone the election to enable the party to provide a candidate. There are two.
Senator Baribe.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Einaya Baribe, and I represent Abia South. And I would like to really support the position of my very good friend, the chairman of Tertiary, and the Senate President. The intendment of having somebody nominated for an executive position is that you cannot validly be nominated without a running mate. And if you cannot be validly nominated without a running mate, how could you, in the unfortunate circumstance that there's a demise, then the same running mate, who you cannot validly be nominated without, now becomes nothing, nobody in the system. No, it does not. That is not the intendment of the law.
Yes.
The law says very clearly, and let me also say something else here for our elucidation. Nigeria is a country in which we are trying to build, and we also would not want to do things to give people opportunities that they will exploit. Yes. And this is an exploitable opportunity where somebody could lose a primaries and actually go after the life of the, because that means he will benefit. So why would we do such a thing here? So I think that the best thing to do is to follow the intendment of the law, that a running mate steps into the shoe of this.
Senator Goji.
Mr. President, in as much as I agree with the last speaker that the runner-up can exploit and even go after the life of the winner, I don't agree with the idea that the second man, the running mate should go into the shoe of the deceased, because we're in Nigeria where we have zoning, a situation where a position is zoned to a zone, and the running mate is for a different zone. If you just automatically change the zone, it will be politically impossible for that party. You put that party at disadvantage.
Okay, distinguished colleagues, there are two. Let me just take two more arguments, for and two against, and then we sit. Those who are in support of the proposal by Senator Baribe, can I just let you people contribute on those lines? Yes, leader.
Sir, the reason why Abaribe's position should be the preferred position, even talking legally, we are talking about contesting an election. And for those who have been following tribunal position on the issue of contest.
Yeah. Yes. Well, as we have said earlier on, since morning when the Senate came out of the executive session, they've been deliberating on one and only one bill. And that bill is that of the report of the Senate Committee on the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, on a bill for an act to amend the Electoral Act number 6, 2010, and for other related matters. It is really, it has been hectic. As we speak at this moment, they are still, the Committee of the Whole, deliberating clause by clause this report. The only thing I can tell you about this bill is that it is detailed and comprehensive. How is that? I'll tell you. It covers virtually everything that you can ever think of that deals with election in this country. For instance, there is the issue of the candidates. If a candidate dies, that is before announcement of a result, you know, that has created some kind of little talk here and there, especially after the demise of Prince Abubakar Abdu of Kogi State. The other areas are also the direct primaries, which some people believe that it needs to be limited and systematic. There is also the issue of incessant conduct of fresh and rerun of elections. Suggestions are that there should be time frame for the conduct of reruns of such elections. Other observers are also of the opinion that INEC itself has to be unbundled. Yes, unbundled in the sense that they believe that there is what they term as the unduly burdensome responsibility, that it has to be shed off some of these things for it to be able to effectively perform. There's also the issue of court sanctions for the breach of tribunal orders. That also is another issue. There is also the issue of the diaspora voting. There is the prisoners voting. There is also that of the question of voting by electoral officials and security agencies who are supposed to be neutral during elections, and so on and so forth. So at the end of it all, it is expected that the Senate will refer this matter to the Constitutional Review Committee for consideration and further legislative action. This is what I can tell you. Whatever it is that took place behind closed doors at the executive session, up to this moment, we have no idea. We may have an idea before the end of the day, and again, we might not. So on this note, that on behalf of the entire production crew, this is Wazir Zayan saying have a very lovely viewing time and a pleasant day ahead. Bye-bye.